Welcome, everybody.
Hi, so this is Herbert here on Baobab Charts. We welcome you again to a different episode, again, continuing from our last previous conversation on the gender-based violence. Today we have a different panel, quite exciting, very informative, that we're going to actually encounter and have quite a little bit of solutions to the gender-based violence that we're experiencing in the country of South Africa, actually, referring to South Africa. So at this particular time, I would want to introduce, or I would actually say they have to introduce themselves to the audience, and then so I would say, and I would like to you guys to introduce yourselves, because if I'm to go to introduce myself, I've always noticed that sometimes they go like, no, I need to correct this. It's not really like that. So I want you guys to introduce yourself so that I do not have to say anything that is bad or that is wrong. Can I start with you, Temba? You can introduce yourself.
Yes, no, thank you so much. My name is Temba Masango. I am the first and the current Secretary General for Not in My Name South Africa. Um, and as you know, that Not in My Name SA is a civil society movement that stands up against social injustices within our country. We are currently the fastest growing civil society movement in South Africa. And one of our flagship campaigns is obviously against gender-based violence, femicide, and the commoditization of women and children in our country. And we see ourselves as a vanguard and a voice of the voiceless majority in South Africa. And it's a real honor and a pleasure to be with you and everybody that's connected with us all across the world.
Yes. Thank you so. Thank you so
I'll,
much, Temba. You can go ahead, Nasli, please.
thank you very much, Herbert, and hello to all the viewers watching across the world. My name is Nazli Sharif, and I am currently a member of Parliament in South Africa, and I serve on the portfolio of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. I have a background coming from the city of Johannesburg as a councillor, where I served for 2 terms, and I also chaired the portfolio for gender youth and persons with disabilities. And I'm very excited to have this conversation, because it is conversations that allow us to open up dialogue and start a narrative on where we should go and what society we want to live in.
Okay, thank you so much, Nasli. There, I think you can go ahead, Pastor Lavi, and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Herbert. My name is Pastor Lavim Lilo Chauke. I'm a pastor at Forward in Faith. I'm based in here in Durban, which is in the KZN East SA province in South Africa. I'm a musician, a gospel musician, a song composer. I'm an author, an entrepreneur, and also being a full-time pastor. I have to deal with all genders, both male and female, and all age groups. And you know that mostly in the church setup, we have more women at church than men. And as a result, in my counseling sessions as a marriage counselor and as a life coach, you get to meet many of these gender based violence, against women and children. And really, it's a disease that have had hit our nation.
Yes, I agree with you there, Pastor. So the thing is, I would actually like to ask, like, some weeks ago, it's about a week or something ago, when President Cyril Ramaphosa said that not less than 21 women were killed. I think it was a period between when he allowed alcohol to be consumed and to that period, and then we had about 21 people, and most of them, and not most of them, some of them were really above around 81, and some were 10 and below 10 years of age. I mean, to what extent in your line of work, in your day-to-day living, in your day-to-day act of work, to what extent is this problem really in African context? Pastor Lavi, I think you already had started with saying that you deal with quite a lot of these from in church. What extent do you think this problem has actually affected us?
What I think is that the problem is not as small as we might think, because you're going to realize that what has been reported, the numbers are very low than what is actually happening. I deal with these cases on a day-to-day basis, where you see women, girls, young children that have been beaten, some, painfully wounded, maimed, and it's unexplainable. And we are seeing that it's a sickness that is in our society, and maybe it might be part of how most men have been nurtured, that in order for them to express their masculinity, they have to do it with violence. But what has been reported, the cases that are at our police stations or at our courts, they are very small. The margin is very small than what is actually happening. A lot of women are suffering in silence. In all circles of life, in all spheres of life, women are suffering. That is what I can say of now, because I deal with these cases. In most cases, in marriage, it's happening. This actually forced me to write a book, just to help young women who are about to get into marriage, because of what I was seeing happening in marriage, and how maybe we could possibly reduce the violence by making sure maybe we think decisively before we engage even in things like marriage, because there is a lot that is happening there.
Yeah, okay, so I get what you mean. I would want to jump to you, Temba. I watched a video that you were talking on a show from one of these from one news channel, and then your opening statement was this. This video was posted in September. I don't know when it actually happened, but they said, "I'm hanging my head in shame." I'm sure you really have an extent to really how you feel about to what extent this is actually is a problem to the African continent, or in South Africa in particular.
Right. No, definitely. We are facing a double pandemic, especially here in South Africa. We've got the coronavirus, but another one that seems to be going around is the one of gender-based violence and femicide. And in September last year, when I mentioned what I mentioned there, that I'm hanging my head in shame as a man, was when we also found out that South Africa is known as a rape capital of the world. And also that our femicide rate, now femicide is the killing of women by intimate partners, it is 5.1 times higher than the rest of the world. But just last week, the new stats were released, and it says that we are now nine times higher than the average femicide rate in the world. It shows you that men, particularly South African men, seem to have waged a civil war against their own counterparts, females. And it is really disturbing to see this on a day-to-day basis, where every day you open the news, you are hearing about a woman who has just gotten stabbed or murdered. Just last week, it was a woman who was hanged. The other day, it was a woman who just got lost and was found murdered and stabbed many times. In our organization, this morning in Cape Town in Philippi, we had a march for a little girl who was also found, maimed in Philippi today, and we had to go to the police station to make sure that we get the necessary answers. And the community, despite the COVID-19 and despite the rain that's happening right now, in Cape Town decided to go out in their numbers to actually confront this issue head on. And, we really need to do something about this pandemic. And it's going to take men to stand up, because women do not rape themselves. Women do not kill themselves. It is done by us as men. And we are going to be the ones that are really now going to have to start taking action. And it's going to start by calling one another out, by saying, at the chisanyamas, at the car washes, at the clubs where we are, calling the guys out and say, you're not going to talk the way you are talking about a lady. You're not going to be catcalling. You're not going to buy a woman drinks and then automatically expect that she's going to sleep with you. Her body is hers. She's got, agency to that. And we need to call one another out on these things, and expose one another. Even if it means I must go call out my own uncle, my own father, and go and open a case. That's what it's going to take to turn this misogynistic and patriarchal mindset that is really in our nation at the moment. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, Nazli, what's your experience about this question?
Thank you, Robert. So I agree with both the pastor and with Temba. For me, when we think about the extent of gender-based violence, it's a very complex and multifaceted issue. And when I say this, I mean that it forms at every single level of society that toxic masculinity, patriarchy, and gender norms and stereotypes seem to manifest itself. So, for example, when a girl child is born into the society, and especially a South African society, it's almost as if society hates her for being a girl child. Because when you take away kindness and when you take away empathy, all you have left is hate. And so when we look at it at different levels of society, we need to start recognizing that as soon as a young person is born into this country, how we bring them up and how we start stating things in the social contract that we seem to have invisibly signed. That is where interventions start need to be happening. In terms of the statistics, absolutely, the statistics we have is not the correct number, and I can guarantee you that there are way more cases of gender-based violence and femicide happening than is going to be reported. And this is another complex issue that we need to look at. Why aren't women going to report their cases? Why are women so scared? And I can tell you why. One of the reasons is that the police system and the justice system doesn't take women's lives seriously. They don't value
Indeed.
lives to a point where we can get justice. So I'll give you an example, if you don't mind. Just last week, I got a phone call from a young woman who lives in the south of Johannesburg. And she was raped a week before. So this was on Monday where she went to the police station, and she was raped on the Monday before that. And when she went to the police station, the police officer said to her, "Why are you only reporting it now? Why did you take so long to come and report it?" And it went so far that they refused to open a docket to report this rape. They then phoned me, and it's only because they phoned me, and this is the problem with society, is that they phoned me, and only when I intervened and I called the colonel in charge of the police station, something happened. They took the girl to a room, and it wasn't even a victim support room, Temba, and you know this, my brother, you know how bad it is in police station. It was literally a meeting room at the back of the police station, where they were taking down her information. Only when I intervened did that happen. Now, this just shows you that why would a woman go to a police station and she has to experience second-degree trauma in order to report the rape? This is one of the problems. Why?
So I want to get you on that part. So you are saying, in other words, if this lady did not know people from high places, okay, I'm just saying, for example, that case was not going to be actually attended to. Okay,
so
this is quite really
I've experienced. This is one. Imagine how many times.
I can tell you right now that we experience at least 5 in a week at Not In My Name, where people saying that I went to open a case, police didn't want to listen to me, or I went to open a case and the police told me to come back the next day, or I went to open a case and the police told me that this is a family matter, we should go home and sort it out with my husband. But here's the problem: is that you send a woman back home to that very same monster, and she never returns again. And we should actually start charging officers, for actually, as part of murder and attempted murder, because sending a woman back into an abusive relationship where she tells you that I was threatened at knife point or at gunpoint is really tells you that our system has got a lot to be designed, and that
A
is
lot of
why
focus.
a lot of these abusers aren't even afraid to abuse, because they know that not much is going to happen to them.
Okay, I'll come back to you guys, but I need to take you with you to have a chat with you, Pastor here. Help me out.
Yes.
I mean, with the authorities are really not, according to even the government. Also, is I mean, from her perspective, is also acknowledging that the authorities are not really taking these issues seriously. How easy is it for me to, as a lady who has been abused, to come approach the church or religious institutions to actually take matters there, or do you actually offer some help to say, okay, because this has happened, I'm also going to open the case and go to the authorities, or what's your approach on this kind of circumstances?
Thank you so much. I think there are some churches with true men and women of God who are still offering help outside there to vulnerable women and children. Yet we cannot also, set aside the fact that there are some bogus, pastors, who take advantage of those hating women to further abuse them. And as a result, you're going to realize that women are becoming more afraid even to approach spiritual authorities or spiritual figures for help, because most of them also they also become exposed to further abuse by other people that pose as men and women of God when actually they are not, but they just want to take advantage of those who are vulnerable. And what I would also want to maybe to say is that I think there is a lot of training and retraining that have to go on even in the religious setup in terms of our pastors or the clergy on how to deal with this sickness that is emerging in our country, because you might realize that some of us, we might not be that prepared to actually help, give the necessary help that is needed for now, because some of the people, I don't think we have ever dealt with such a scourge that is hitting our country. So there is help is there, but what I can say is that the fear that has gripped most women, they are even afraid to trust churches because of what they are hearing as well, what is
Yep.
happening in the churches. You realize that the Human Rights Commission has been investigating churches about the abuses that are going on also in the religious circles.
Yes.
So now, where will they turn to? Because they go to the police, they are not helped. They come to the church, also, it's like there are hyenas that are waiting to just tear them apart. So at the end of the day, you find that these women have nowhere to go except to boil or on the inside. And
It's
it is
true.
very true that when we look at our justice system, I think more is to be desired. There is need of a correction of everything in terms of our justice system. It is actually biblical that when we turn a blind eye on criminality, we are actually supporting it. We are actually perpetuating it. There is a scripture in the
Okay.
book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 8. It's on verse number 11. The Bible says there, because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Let me repeat that scripture. Because of the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore, the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Once a crime is committed against women, against children, and it is not dealt with speedily, we are encouraging criminals to continue and to become worse, because the justice system is not addressing the situation on the ground.
The situation on the ground.
Yes.
That's true.
Just
Yeah.
imagine
It's true.
a case of a woman who is being killed. There are witnesses there. There are people who are actually taking the video, whatever. At the end of the day, that case can drag for 2-3 years until it loses maybe significance or value. People are no longer following it because it takes long for justice to be granted. That's
true.
that we have.
Yes, in this particular case that you actually given as an example, I mean, what are the authorities doing in this kind of case? Because now you have a situation where people also do not trust the justice system. Like, I don't feel protected as a woman. I mean, I just got raped. And then if I come to any of this organization, what needs to be done? Okay, you said then you had to call the police because someone told you because you know them. But what is an ordinary person supposed to do with respect to that? I just got raped. And then I tried this and that. And then I know the justice system is actually failing us. I know the church is actually failing us. And then I just got raped. Like, now, maybe this might actually help someone in need now. How and what are they supposed to do? I mean, I can start with you, Temba, on this one.
Yeah, it's actually a pertinent thing, and that is why at Not in My Name we've actually started a program that is called Train Them All with regards to the SA Police Services, and it's led by our head of communications there, where we have actually started engagements with the police to say that you need to have your frontline police people, highly trained when it comes to issues of gender-based violence. Police officials need to know that they are not counselors. When somebody comes and opens a case to say that I've just gotten raped, they need to open a case for the person. They need to have proper rooms that are available, which are private, which are clean, and so that evidence can also be kept and statements can be taken. Not just somebody who just walks into a police station and then if somebody says I've just gotten raped, then the police officer in front of everybody is saying who did it, why were you dressed like this, and so on and so on. We need to have a clear gender sensitivity training and how to handle issues of violence when it comes to women and children done to the police. And we are currently in talks with the police and giving them ideas as to how that they can handle that. Two, also in places such as churches and so on, because churches have become crime scenes. We've dealt with situations where pastors, elders, deacons are the very same ones who are abusing women and girls within churches. And we need to have a situation where pastors are vetted and checked thoroughly, just like you and I would be checked when going to apply for a high profile job. We get vetted, we get checked, where we get questioned, who are we, where we're coming from, and so on. And and they too, I believe, also need to be qualified in the sense that they need to get the necessary gender training as well, and sensitivity training as part of their counseling training for you to qualify to be a pastor, not somebody who just comes out from the street and says they've got a calling on their lives. And then
Yes,
also,
I agree. Okay, you can finish.
yeah,
I wanted to hold you before you continue to
right,
the next point. And can you narrow it down to a point
yes,
where probably you said it and I missed it, to say, I am a girl, I got raped today,
right.
and I
That's
got
my
not
point. Yeah,
in my name, and then where exactly and what's going to happen? What am I
you're
expecting
right.
to
So,
happen?
so for example, because we know of the lack of faith that we have in the system, we've encouraged people through our website or through our social media pages that if you have gone through such a thing, you can anonymously, log a call with Not in My Name. and then we would then direct you, encourage you to say, okay, go to the police station, and then also mention that you've also spoken to somebody at Not in My Name. And so if the rape is done in Mamelodi, for example, you'll have to go to the Mamelodi police station, but mention to them that you've just been at Not in My Name, and this is the guidance that they gave you, to say that they have to open the case according to the law and so on in South Africa. This is what they need to do. And if by all means we can, what we try and do is to have somebody there that goes with them from the organization to actually assist in making sure that that case is open. Obviously, we can't reach in all areas. We are only 54,000 in membership in number, so we can't reach for the whole country. But where we can is really to try and make sure that everybody gets their voice heard there. Yeah.
Okay. So I would come to you, Nazli, but I just want to do some maths here. I'm not really good with it, but I'll try. So Temba here, so that by now we are 9 times the time like the global. Am I correct, Temba? Yes.
That's in terms of femicide. Yes.
Yes. So, but then we have established the fact that most cases are actually not being recorded. They're not being reported. So we are literally not at 9. This is the official.
Yes. Could be more.
So the figure is probably could be more, maybe 100 times. And from this angle, and actually, if this is as scary as it seems statistically, what in your line of work, what from a government perspective, from a public office perspective, what can be done and what is being done to curb this surge of that's growing exponentially? What we just know, COVID has exposed things that are just already happening. They're already happening. Just the situation just made it to expose, but they were happening. What is the government doing from the public office perspective?
Sure. So I am an opposition MP, so maybe I should start saying that unfortunately I don't have the implementation, but my role and Parliament's role is to do oversight over the executive. So Parliament is the legislature and we do oversight on the executive. So that's what our role is. Before I answer your question, Herbert, I just want to quickly just say something about the police. Now, can you imagine that if police are refusing to open up cases for women who have been raped or who have been assaulted or domestic violence in their homes? Can you imagine how much more difficult it is for the LGBTIQA community to report cases of gender-based violence and femicide? And oftentimes, we as South Africa, we are not intersectional when looking at gender-based violence and femicide. So we don't speak enough about the violence faced by trans bodies. We don't speak enough about corrective rape that is happening to lesbian women. And these all form part of gender-based violence and femicide. So these cases also go unreported. They go unheard of because of the stigma that is attached to the LGBT community, which is nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. And that's why sensitization is so important for the police, for the prosecutors, for teachers, for pastors, for in any community organization, faith-based organization. It's very important to be inclusive and recognize that intersectionality does exist, and it's very important. In terms of what government is currently doing is for gender-based violence and femicide, just yesterday, in fact, the Multi-Party Women's Caucus Steering Committee got a presentation by the Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, Minister Maite Mashabane. And she had presented the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. And basically what this is a 132-page plan that was put together through a declaration called the GBV Declaration that was signed by President Ramaphosa in March 2019. Now, I'm not sure if many will remember, but there was, in September 2018, there was a march, a protest, one of the biggest marches and protests in our history by the Total Shutdown movement. And basically what this did is it got all women organizations together, and it said, we are going to protest in all the capital, in all the cities in South Africa, and we are going to demand that change needs to happen. After this protest happened and the president was forced to address the protesters, he put together a commission where the declaration was signed, and the declaration had different articles say what needs to happen in order to fight the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. After the declaration had happened, it was then part of the declaration was to create an interim steering committee. And the interim steering committee, the ISC, was mandated to put together the National Strategic Plan and then launch the National Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Council. And that's currently what's happening right now. So the NSP is dropped. It's done.
Yeah.
Seen it, Temba. I hope you've seen it. If you haven't, I'm going to send it to you.
I've definitely seen it. Here's the problem is that the president had the meeting and everything was wonderful, and the drafts, the paperwork, and everything sounds so nice and wonderful, but it does not trickle down to the ground, to the streets. He threw 1.1 billion rands to this problem, but here we are today, and we are sitting with the problem, and it's actually getting worse by the day. And I'm still wanting to find out where that money has gone to as well, and what's happening with all of that money. Or
I asked about it. So you remember, Tim, and I'm happy you brought it up. Last year, September, in fact, President Ramaphosa made an announcement, and he spoke about it again last week, Wednesday, when he addressed the nation. And he said that government has allocated 1.6 billion rand to fight gender-based violence and femicide. Now, when we first heard about this, we posed a question to Treasury to ask them, okay, cool. President Ramaphosa says there's 1.6 billion. Can you show us where that money is coming from?
Exactly, simple.
And we got nothing. So
yes, and there's our problem.
Out of the adjusted budget. Hold on, it wasn't taken out of the adjusted budget. So if it's not taken out of the adjusted budget and given to different departments, there's no money. There's no money.
Exactly. And here's my issue. Sorry to come in there. Is that you can't say you've given people all this money, but the money is not trickling down to the ground to see the effectiveness of the money that's being there, because the issue is that it's not just happening in high offices. These things are happening on the ground in places like Hammanskraal, where they've got Amavuso, where they take women and actually literally sell them for a price, and we go there and risk our lives to actually fight men off of women, and in pubs, in clubs, where we have social contact and talks with men to say, listen, it doesn't mean if you've bought her 6 beers now, it automatically means you're going home with her. That money has not come down to the ground in any way. And it's all good and well for them to sit in high and lofty offices and air conditioned and just saying how bad gender-based violence is, unless it comes to the ground. Because your first statement was so great, that fighting gender-based violence is from a multifaceted approach, and it needs every single hand on deck, from government, civil society organizations, churches, and everybody. But that needs to be felt all the way coming down. So if they're going to keep the money there and just let it go up there, it's not going to help, and they're going to have problem from civil society, because we need to know where that money went.
They must show.
They must show us the money. Show us the money.
Money. Lip service. We're not expecting lip service.
Okay, so we are in agreement that so there is money that is promised. And because I am seeing here, I'm sorry if I'm going to not really say the actual name, but then her last name is actually Nkosi. And then she says, Ramaphosa is all talks and our government is corrupt. I mean, yes, we have come to that point, and this is what's really happening. This is the reality of the matter. And most of the times, I think when we actually mention that, we try by all means to deal with things as they are happening, because the government gives statistics and things that probably are not really happening, and things that are not being implemented, but they are just being spoken about on TV, and we have witnessed some of that. But we don't really want to dive down into the corrupt part of, or not really things being implemented as promised.
Can I interject? Yes. It's important to speak about corruption, because corruption happens even in police stations and at the courts. How many times has a docket gone missing, or the court file can't be found?
Yes,
100%. I mean, and Pastor Levy's scripture was exactly to that, to say if the criminals are the very same ones who are sitting in lofty offices. If we don't act on them, the assistance that's needed on the ground won't get there. So we need to see all of these people wearing
What needs
orange
to be established?
things.
What needs to be established is that the government needs to be held accountable on what it promised, and then actually need to be followed through on the process that needs to be happening. Yes, I agree, and I'm in agreement with, I think, so many people who also actually be in agreement with you. But I want to go back to you, Pastor Lavi, that today ago, I'm still really particular from a perspective from all different angles of the society that supports this, that if a girl today comes to your church and then it says, I am raped, pastor, or this is what happened to me, what are the necessary procedures, processes that needs to happen, be it from your perspective as a Christian or from a perspective, from a religious perspective, to say, if they are not, probably this might be your advice to say, okay, guys, when they come, try to do this. Let's be in a position to do that. That's the thing that you actually have been happening to you now, like how you would actually have handled the situation.
Thank you. Maybe first of all, before I answer that, what I think should be in place is that number one, I think like what Masango said, that there should be proper training. I've followed so many debates even on Facebook, when people says biblical training, like going to the Bible school or the university is not important. What's important is a call. God can call you. That's very true. But you need to be trained now on how to deal with people, different people from different classes. You need to be trained. When you go for a Bible school, you are trained on how to deal with people, on issues that regard marriage, that regards counseling, all areas of counseling. That is important. That must be undertaken by everyone who calls himself a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Formal training is needed. Just becoming spiritual only without formal training can be very dangerous. Then I also believe that when someone comes to me and they say they have been raped, first of all, I need to counsel them and make them understand that it's a crime that has happened to them. And because it's a crime that has happened to them, they have to make sure that the perpetrator is reported so that he does not continue with his acts. Because one crime done to another woman, it's a crime done to a million. If that person is not brought to the book, they will continue doing the same thing to many other women. So when that person is exposed, at least we will be able to take that criminal out of our society and close him somewhere where they can keep him safe, and we know that the women will be safe from this one now. But we don't have to, in most cases, we just say, no, forgive him. The Bible says forgive and he shall be forgiven. And yes, forgiveness is important, but we don't have to turn a blind eye on crime that has happened. It doesn't matter how close the person is, because some of these people, they are relatives. Some of these people, maybe they might be church members or whatever. And by trying to protect that person, we are actually, promoting crime. So that's what happens. You are going to realize that it happens in families. One family member raped another family member, and we say it's a family issue. And by doing so, we are protecting a criminal who might go otherwise out there and hate many more. So let's set the issue of forgiveness and deal with it separately, and let's deal with criminality separately, and make sure the 100%. Person is exposed. I think that's the approach that we must have as a church. When the person has been reported and the person is being dealt with, then the pastor or the pastorate or the leadership can be helping the woman just to be able to overcome the pain and whatever, and to go through the process. But we must go through the process, the whole process together, supporting that woman. I think this is what must happen. And maybe something of not of importance, I think also it's high time that even in our curriculum at school, we must begin to teach our children at a very tender age, respecting one another and respecting women from a very tender age. If these things are instilled in our children from a very tender age, it might help, because we are realizing that most of these people that turn out to be violent against women, these are things that they are exposed to at home. They are seeing their father doing it, they are seeing their relatives doing it. But when they come at school and they hear a different language and something new is instilled in them, they will grow up with morals and be able to respect each other and respect women. So I believe we must boil down, even go to our institutions of learning from as young as, preschool, grade 1. We must talk about it every day, not wait until there is a crime, then we begin to raise placards and say gender-based violence must stop, when we are not doing anything to instill it in our children that this is wrong. We don't have to say it's wrong when it has been done. We have to teach it.
100%, and I agree with the
Yes,
pastor, definitely.
I
And
mean,
I'm sure.
just quick add.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Nazli. I just want to add to what he said, and then I'll come back to you. So I think everybody here is in agreement. What Pastor said is actually really fundamental. But I have noticed that when you were talking about, maybe this was only a special case when you had to be on women on different parties. This is what you said when you were creating this document that you had to submit to the president. Is that correct, Nazli?
No, we
when
didn't.
you created.
They put it together and they submitted it to
Okay.
Parliament. So it's the executive who comes up with policies and frameworks, and they submit it to Parliament to be approved. That's how the process works.
Okay, so this was more women, or the only women that wrote this document.
So it was,
or it was everybody involved.
It was government and civil society. And this is the only reason I have faith in the NSP, is because civil society has helped put it together.
So I wanted to come to a point where actually, because Pastor mentioned some part of the question that I wanted to go to, like, what is the role of men in all this? And I think it's very fundamental that we.
Right, 100%.
That many like women are not raping themselves, they're not abusing themselves. This is actually what's happening. But what is the role of us as men? What would be for you?
I would definitely say. Sorry, go ahead, Nazli.
Just stop doing it. That's the role of a man. Stop it.
And exactly. And, I would also say that it's going to take us men as well to hold each other accountable. And because, as you rightly say, women are not the ones that rape themselves or kill themselves. And this thing of an unspoken bro code that is there, it should come to an end, because it's the bro code that has actually killed many women in our society, where we are sitting at a corner and a woman is walking by, and already guys are catcalling and saying names and talking about what they want to do to her and so on. We should be at that point, stop it right there and call it out, irrespective of who it is, and say, you're not going to do that. Because if we don't confront each other, and in our back doors, in our pubs, in our soccer places, when it's just us men alone, and we continue to have those derogatory and misogynistic thoughts and conversations around each other, and in the open have good and nice sanitized ones, the culture is going to persist. And so it's going to really take us, when we're alone as guys, and having beer, or pastor having cool drink, whatever the case may be, and talking amongst ourselves. We really need to be the ones that actually raise these issues sharply to one another, and discourage and shun those amongst us that want to perpetuate this culture of toxic masculinity amongst us. And moreover, if when it comes to sentencing and so on, we should actually start talking about whether, if you are going to go and murder somebody who goes into a post office, or go and stab a woman 18 times, you have basically taken her right of life away. Should your right to life also not be taken away?
Oh, okay, so there is one thing that actually have come popped up. Someone, Shelton Tapua Chiangwa, actually said that none of these panelists, none of us, have actually mentioned about violence against men. Are we only talking about violence against women? I mean,
No, right
culturally, what
now,
do you think?
no,
I mean,
right now, it's not. That's not the issue. It's like saying
uh,
all lives matter when people are saying Black Lives Matter. The black house is the
okay,
one that's on
okay,
fire. That's where we should be
mhm,
focusing. We all know that
mhm,
people do get abused, and men as well. But right now, the issue is
yes.
that we are having far more women that are being killed on a daily basis. So let's not sugarcoat the issue and try to inject other things here. Right now
And
is that
deviate
women's
from the
lives are the
actual.
ones that are in trouble. Yes.
Okay, okay.
I,
So,
I,
so
I really like that, Timba, because oftentimes we want to compare struggles. And I don't think we in a space to compare struggles. That X
Mm.
has it worse than X. But having said that, I think when we speak about toxic masculinity and patriarchy, we also need to start speaking about how much it affects the boy child, just as it affects the girl child. And growing up with these toxic traits of men shouldn't have emotions, boys don't cry, boys don't speak about their feelings. These are all things that contribute to growing up with a negative perception of how to handle your emotions and then become violent. You know, the pastor was saying it comes in households. Pastor, if I tell you that I know of a woman who's being beaten by her husband who does not come from a violent home, but she accepts it as love. And so, you know, it's also about giving and reaching that support. And Herbert, just to go quick back to your question,
Mm.
if somebody gets hurt, what do they do? We have amazing civil organizations in this country, just like Not in My Name, Fight Back SA, Sisonke Gender Justice. There's so many that you can contact if you're not getting any assistance at police stations. And contact your local councillor or your member of parliament or your member of provincial legislature, because they have been elected by you and therefore must represent your interests. And that's what I think needs to happen. In terms of the role of men, I agree we have an opportunity in South Africa to start introducing this curriculum in classes. The basic education minister is going to be launching the sex classes, the curriculum. I don't remember the official name for it, but this is an opportunity for us to start adding consent, just as they did in Kenya, as a case study, to start teaching what consent actually means. How do we change toxic masculinity to positive masculinity? How do we teach empathy? Empathy and respect, and this is how I opened when I first started, is that's the bedrock of a society that I want to live in, is somewhere where we deal with each other with empathy. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, we can look at each other as human beings and have respect from that point of view. Um, so that's, and you know, Temba, when you say call our friends out. Absolutely. I think call out culture plays a role in that point. And I can tell you, I've told my father many times that he's being sexist, and I've corrected his behavior so that moving forward, he changes his mindset. And we have to do that. If you're not calling your homies out, you are part of the problem. And I've been
okay,
catcalled. You know, when you spoke about
okay.
catcalling, I remembered being catcalled. I went to a fruit shop, and there was a group of guys on the corner. And I pulled in and I walked to the fruit shop. And these guys literally catcalled me and followed me into the shop. And I got so scared that I immediately went to the front of the teller because I wasn't sure what they could possibly do to me because they have that power over me as a woman. And none of their friends said anything. Everybody kept quiet. And this is part of the problem that we face in
I'm,
this country.
I'm sure every woman has that experience. We had this chat before last week. If you had watched it before, it's more or less like where you really feel like even if my sister would not feel safe at home being actually walking around. I mean, from a religious perspective, what would be the role of men, Pastor? Like, what do we have to do as men from from a religious perspective?
Yeah, thank you so much, Herbert. Now, I think God has given men a very important role, especially from a religious perspective. Man was created by God, and particularly, you realize that man is muscular, and that is to protect the family, not to abuse them. You know, the structure of a man is there just to protect, to give warmth to the family. And therefore, it is when we don't understand our roles as men that we end up abusing the people that we are supposed to protect. And let me say this, Herbert. Maybe as a way forward, I would want to say, where are these men that are abusing? Where are they coming from? They are coming, number one, from a home. They were born. So we have to look at everything and try to revolutionize everything. They were born by parents. So when we look at how they became abusers now, it shows us that maybe there is a challenge in parenting as well of children. Maybe there is no role model in terms of the father. Maybe there is no proper parenting by the mother and the father, because someone cannot just turn out to be violent if they've been properly raised up. So let's go back to parenting. Let's look at kids that are roaming the streets right now. I'm sitting here in Durban. It's one of the places or of the provinces that have a lot of homeless children. Those children are growing up. They will begin to have these feelings towards women. And in order for them to express those feelings, that's when they go into abusing. Where are the parents of these children at the end of the day? Who is raising them up, or they are being raised by the streets? Are we not raising criminals in them? So it boils down to parenting as well, that we are not properly parenting our children and instilling values and morals in them as they are growing up. Okay, let's go again the other way. The problem is we are hearing that is even the working places, the working environment. We have got people who are even maybe educated, but in order for a woman to get a position of influence in that place, you know, he has to go via bedroom. So we have to teach our men, even in the working places, to begin to respect women, their mentality towards women, how they see women. And also maybe, as I finish, let's go to the police stations. All right. When we go there, we are hearing that cases are not being noted. People cannot even effectively report a case there at the police station. So what must happen? Is it not high time that maybe women who are being violated, whose lives are being violated, should they not be at the forefront, and maybe create a special section that deals with gender-based violence at the police station, whereby when you know there are offices that are specifically for that, people that are trained to deal with such cases, and maybe we have courts as well in the justice system, prosecutors and magistrates who are specifically there for gender-based violence, nothing else. There must be a court that has to represent that. There must be prosecutors and police personnel who are actually there for that only, not anything else. I think if we can deal with that, then when we come to church as well, these are the things that we should be able to teach for our men to be able to respect women. At school, we do the same thing. When we have this approach as a society, I think it might actually bring better results.
Okay, so
I would like to respectfully disagree with the pastor on a point that he made. And I fundamentally disagree with you, Pastor.
Okay, let me just...
Not to protect me. I'm to be protected from the man. And
what?
so
Yes.
we may disagree on the role of a man, and that's part of the problem, is that we put roles on men to be a certain way, and then it perpetuates violence against. I don't need a man to protect me, Pastor. I need to be protected from a man, and that's what I disagree with you on.
Okay.
Okay. So you want to respond back. I just want to say the last point, and then you say your parting shot and you respond to her. So, I mean, we have dissected from different perspectives, from maybe from public office, should I call it, and then from not in my name, and then from a religious perspective. I mean, what will be your message to a fellow African, be a young man like me, be anybody, or be a young lady? What will be the message that they should carry out of this discussion? In your parting short, and you can conclude. I can start with you, Temba, in this one, if you
Yeah,
don't mind.
I'd really want to say that, look, this isn't a trial run. There's no take two at this. This is real life,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
people are going through the most on a daily basis. And I just saw somebody saying that, what is, talking about gender-based violence, and yes, all genders are involved. Remember, gender is not a sex. Sex is in the pants, but gender is in the mind. So how one defines themselves in society. We can go into LGBTQI and so on. So, but right now, the burning issue that is currently happening amongst us is that women and children are being abused, and at a higher ratio than men are. And yes, everybody needs to be protected. Everybody is guided by the Constitution and the law and so on. However, what we are seeing is that we've got a country that is at war with its own women. Thomas Sankara told us that no country can claim to be liberated while its women and children are still, suffering and unable to be represented and being free in the very nation that they claim to be living in. So if we want to say that we are truly emancipated, let us make sure that we emancipate women and children, because it's a fundamental human right. And once we can get that on par, then we can start looking into other things as to how and what. But we need to keep the struggle moving forward, and we need to stand up for each other, by each other. And as a man, I can never speak to the pain of women, because I'm not a woman, but I can definitely speak against wrong. And we need to do that going forward as men much more loudly, and make sure that we support our counterparts.
Okay. You can go ahead, Pastor.
Right. I think going forward as men, and especially as people in the society, I'll just speak from a religious perspective. The Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Sometimes the way we treat other people, it shows how much we hate ourselves. The way we treat each other speaks volumes about me, the one who's doing the treatment to the other person. So when we begin to love ourselves, we are going to see other people as valuable as ourselves. But if we don't love ourselves, it's going to be reflected by the way we treat our neighbors, or we treat our partners, or our spouses, or our children, or any other person in the society. So I think it's high time that we begin to reflect on ourselves and be healed, emotionally, mentally, and begin to appreciate who we are. And then if we have a healthy perspective of who we are, then it will help in terms of how we relate with one another.
Nazli, I saw you clapping hands there. I'm sure you agree with it.
But healing is so important for our society, because it is a fact that we have generational trauma within our DNA. And it manifests in different ways. And one of those ways is the lack of empathy that we have for one another. And so I agree with the pastor when he says that we need to get healing. And one of the things that I'm personally pushing for is that we have better access to mental health practitioners for young people, and also choice in how they want to get that care and that healing when it comes to mental health. For me, my message to fellow young Africans is, you have a voice. You have a voice to determine what type of society that we want to live in. This is our future that we are talking about. And the current present that we are in is we are leaderships in this very moment. Oftentimes, they say to young people, oh, you're the leaders of tomorrow. No, we are the leaders of today. And we have to start changing the social fabric so that we can make a society that we want to live in. It's up to us as young people. How we raise our children has to be different to how our parents raised us. We have to start being more kind towards one another, and especially in the political spaces. But most importantly, keep your elected officials accountable. We have a democracy in this country. We have elections every 4 years. Go to the polls to hold them accountable. When you find out who your local councillor is, find out who your local member of parliament or member of the provincial legislature is, and hold them accountable. Because too often we don't hold public reps accountable, and the buck keeps getting passed on, and then 5 years from now, Herbert, we're going to be back here in the Baobab chats, speaking about the exact same thing that we're speaking about today, because those in power are not implementing what they're supposed to be implementing, and there's so much corruption happening that we are not keeping our women and the LGBTIQA plus community safe. So stop it, be kind.
Okay, it has been a very great
indeed,
conversation.
100%.
Yes, I like the 100% part. It has been really a great conversation. I thank you guys for joining us today, and those who are watching us live. It has been really a wonderful conversation, insightful and very informative. I'm sure you have all listened to their contributions and their organizations. If you need more help, they will be actually there to help you in whatever situation that you are in. And I am sure, I'm confident that 5 years from now, I'll be able to hold Nazli accountable at some point. I'm hoping.
Please
But
do.
anyway, guys, it has been a pleasure, and see you next week.
Cheers,
Thank you.
Herbert. Thank you, man. Cheers, man.
Thank you, Herbert.
Bye.
Thank you, Nazli.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.